You are paying thousands of dollars every single summer to simply survive the heat, trapped inside a relentless cycle of skyrocketing electric bills and expensive, fragile machinery. The $200 billion air conditioning and heating industry has successfully convinced the global population that the only possible way to cool a room is by pumping massive amounts of toxic, highly regulated chemical refrigerants through incredibly complex, power-hungry mechanical compressors. They have deliberately engineered a modern reality where basic human comfort is held hostage by utility monopolies and manufacturing conglomerates. But before these machines existed, before the electrical grid became a mandatory tax on human existence, the military and aerospace sectors had already completely solved the problem of extreme heat using pure, passive, grid-independent thermodynamics. There is a simple, naturally occurring powder costing less than $2 to procure that actively absorbs ambient thermal energy and can drop the temperature of a standard living space by up to 15 degrees. This is not some temporary, ineffective hack using ice and a fan. It is a permanent, self-sustaining endothermic reaction. They did not abandon this thermal principle because it failed. They abandoned it because it worked too well. It is virtually free, and it absolutely cannot generate recurring utility revenue for the power grid. If you are currently sitting in a continuously hot house, watching your energy bill drain your bank account month after month, while your expensive cooling equipment barely keeps up, drop the word sweat in the comments right now. We need to publicly document exactly how many citizens are being actively and purposefully financially drained by this manufactured reliance on the centralized electrical grid. Modern residential air conditioning is a calculated masterpiece of manufactured complexity. The entire system is explicitly designed to eventually fail, require highly specialized maintenance, consume expensive proprietary chemical refrigerants, and, most importantly, keep your power meter spinning constantly. The utility companies and the massive hardware manufacturers are not partners in your comfort or your survival. They are partners in a predatory business model that entirely relies on your continuous financial bleeding. When you purchase an air conditioning unit, you are not buying a permanent solution to the environmental heat. You are unknowingly buying a lifelong subscription to a machine that demands continuous capital just to function. The hardware itself is merely the entry fee to the ecosystem. The real, astronomical profit lies in the recurring revenue generated by the extreme electricity it consumes and the inevitable, highly orchestrated breakdowns of its overly complicated internal mechanical parts. Stay with me, because what I am about to show you will completely dismantle their entire, heavily guarded business model and permanently return the power of climate control back into your own hands. To truly understand how we have been systematically deceived for decades, we must look directly at the declassified technical documents from the National Aeronautics and Space Administration from the year 1973. When aerospace engineers were designing early spacecraft and orbital habitats, they faced a massive, seemingly impossible thermodynamic problem. The side of a metal space capsule directly facing the sun would rapidly reach boiling, lethal temperatures, while the dark side would simultaneously freeze. They absolutely could not install massive, heavy, traditional air conditioning compressors into these vehicles. They simply did not have the electrical power grid or the spatial capacity to spare for such inefficient machinery. They required a completely passive thermal system that required literally 0 watts of electricity, but could instantly and reliably stabilize extreme temperatures. The elegant solution they perfected relied entirely on what are known as phase change materials. These are specific, unique chemical compounds that absorb massive amounts of thermal energy from the ambient air simply by changing their physical state from a solid powder to a liquid or from a solid to a gel, without utilizing any mechanical assistance whatsoever. This is the part where the numbers become uncomfortable. A standard residential central air conditioning unit consumes roughly 3,000 to 5,000 watts of electrical power per hour of operation. Over a single hot summer month, that mechanical inefficiency forces you to hand over hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars directly to the energy monopoly. The passive phase change method developed by early scientists consumes absolutely 0 watts of power. It requires 0 expensive maintenance calls from licensed technicians. It does not break down, and the chemical reaction lasts indefinitely. If you made it this far, you already know significantly more about applied thermodynamics and consumer market manipulation than 99% of the general population. Subscribe to this channel and share this broadcast to protect this knowledge before the industry attempts to aggressively erase it again. They heavily rely on our collective consumer ignorance to easily maintain their massive profit margins. We must rely on our collective intelligence to permanently break their monopoly. The exact physics and molecular thermodynamics of this suppressed solution demand scrutiny. The air inside your home currently holds a specific amount of thermal energy. To cool the room down, you must physically remove that kinetic energy from the air molecules. A traditional air conditioner attempts to do this by forcing a synthetic chemical refrigerant to rapidly evaporate and condense through a violent, loud mechanical cycle, blowing the extracted heat outside while blowing the chilled air inside. But phase change materials accomplish this exact same goal silently and molecularly. When the ambient room temperature reaches a specific, predetermined threshold, the rigid chemical bonds within the powder begin to naturally loosen. To successfully break these molecular bonds and transition into a liquid or gel state, the material requires a massive influx of kinetic energy. It pulls that necessary energy directly from the surrounding air in the absolute form of heat. This process utilizes the latent heat of fusion. As the powder relentlessly absorbs the heat, the air around it rapidly and noticeably cools down. Once the room naturally cools off late at night, the saturated material releases the stored heat and chemically returns to its original solid state, completely resetting itself to repeat the exact same cycle the very next day. It is an infinite, unbreakable law of basic physics. They buried the science, we dig it up. The specific, highly effective compound that the air conditioning industry and the chemical manufacturers desperately want you to ignore is known in chemistry as sodium sulfate decahydrate, which is historically and commonly referred to as Glauber's salt. When combined with a tiny, calculated amount of plain water and a basic household thickening agent, it creates a remarkably powerful, self-contained phase change gel. You cannot patent basic sodium sulfate decahydrate, and what you cannot patent, you cannot build a billion-dollar industry on. This plain white powder is naturally mined from the earth and used in incredibly basic, cheap industrial manufacturing. You can purchase a massive, heavy bag of it for mere pennies. When this specific crystal reaches roughly 73 degrees Fahrenheit, it begins to physically melt. But it does not just melt passively like normal ice. It undergoes an intense, highly efficient endothermic process, violently absorbing ambient heat from the air to fuel its molecular transformation. It can absorb roughly 82 calories of heat per single gram of material, making it exponentially more effective than water or concrete at storing thermal energy. A few small, sealed containers of this exact mixture, strategically placed in a room, will act as a silent, invisible, relentless vacuum for thermal energy. Before acquiring this compound, you must deeply understand the exact, uncompromising chemical formulation. Most people who accidentally discover this historical aerospace trick do it completely wrong, severely ruin the chemical reaction, and end up with a completely useless puddle of separated salt water. Here is the one mandatory step that guarantees the endothermic result and forces the massive temperature drop in your home. If you simply mix the raw sodium sulfate decahydrate powder with standard water, The chemical components will inevitably separate over a short period of time due to a destructive process called phase segregation. The heavier, dense salts will quickly sink to the bottom of the container, and the lighter water will float to the top, completely destroying the thermal sponge effect and rendering the material inert. To permanently prevent this from happening, you must physically bind the molecules together using a specific matrix. You must take exactly 3 cups of the raw sodium sulfate powder and place it into a large, wide, flat plastic or glass container. You then slowly add exactly 1 cup of warm distilled water. Then you must introduce the crucial binding agent. You must aggressively mix in 2 tablespoons of standard, cheap household borax powder, which acts as a molecular cross-linking agent. Finally, you add exactly 1 tablespoon of ordinary iodized table salt. This table salt is the critical catalyst that slightly and perfectly adjusts the melting point of the entire mixture to exactly match the desired temperature of a comfortable living room. You must stir this entire mixture slowly and continuously until it forms a very thick, uniform, heavy paste. You absolutely must seal the container tightly with a lid or heavy plastic wrap to permanently prevent any of the internal water from evaporating into the air. Once you have successfully created these permanent thermal batteries, you simply place them directly in the path of any natural or artificial airflow. You can easily set them in front of a slightly open window, securely mount them under a spinning ceiling fan, or place them directly behind a simple, low-wattage desk fan. As the warm, uncomfortable air passes over the sealed containers, the chemical paste inside begins its invisible, powerful work. It will violently absorb the heat from the passing breeze, physically dropping the temperature of the air current by up to 15 degrees before it circulates through the rest of your living space. As the day reaches its absolute peak heat, the solid paste will slowly turn into a thick liquid, having successfully absorbed hundreds of watts worth of thermal energy entirely for free, without spinning a single power meter. When the sun finally goes down and the ambient room temperature naturally drops, the liquid will naturally and predictably crystallize back into a solid paste, autonomously resetting itself for the exact same process the following day. This chemical cycle will repeat forever without ever degrading, without requiring maintenance, and without asking for a monthly payment. You have been thoroughly conditioned since birth to believe that human comfort inherently requires a massive monthly financial payment to a faceless, sprawling corporation. You have been relentlessly told by expensive marketing campaigns that escaping the brutal summer heat requires highly toxic chemicals, loud mechanical compressors, and vulnerable, failing electrical grids. But the immutable laws of thermodynamics do not require a credit card, and they do not require a service contract. The military knew this decades ago. Early aerospace pioneers understood this completely. And now, you possess this exact same knowledge. By properly utilizing a $2 mixture of basic, unpatentable earth minerals, you can permanently sever your dangerous reliance on a predatory, monopolistic industry and entirely reclaim your financial independence. They meticulously engineered a complex system to keep you forever reliant and forever paying. It is now time for you to rationally engineer your way out.